Anderson Cooper, AC 360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
In airports across the country tonight, thousands are still waiting and waiting and waiting. Earlier, I spoke with Michael Boyd, airline analyst with the Boyd Aviation Group, and Brandon Macsata, executive director of the Association for Airline Passenger Rights, about who or what is really to blame. All right, Mike, let's start with you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that you think the airlines have actually done a fairly good job throughout all of this. Now, there are a lot of people watching tonight who probably disagree with you. So what makes you think that?
Well, I think it's what you can do versus what you'd like to do. You know, having been on that side of the table, or both sides of the table of this, you know, and I wasn't at LaGuardia to put up with this grief, but what can you do when the runways are shut down? You have 3,000 or 4,000 people there. You got people calling reservations trying to rebook. You don't have many reservations people. That's a problem. I guess it's wrong to say I think they've done a great job. I guess the point is, could they have done anything better under the circumstances? Probably yes, but would it be marginally better? I don't know.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. I mean, is this really the best we can do?
Well, when you have, you know, every runway in the New York area shut down over a holiday period and people trying to get home and airplanes canceled all over, I don't know what that means. It means how do you handle it? You can't open the runways. You can't make airplanes fly in bad weather. So the question is, how did you handle the people on the ground? And I'll bet there's legions of stories where people were handled wonderfully and legions where the people sat there thinking, what am I going to do? Will I ever get out of this airport?
And Brandon, this was the first test of the Passengers' Bill of Rights, which is supposed to prohibit airlines from scheduling those chronically delayed flights. We've heard nightmare stories of people spending 11 hours on a plane. And you say the Bill of Rights actually doesn't go far enough, or this wouldn't have happened.
Well, Randy, we would like to strike a balance. You know, we hear stories where people can't even get information as to when they might be able to get a new flight. That goes to the issue of, you know, the phone systems being overloaded. They should have been prepared. We don't blame the airlines or the airports, for that matter, for bad weather. We most certainly do hold them responsible for being able to react when a situation like this arises.
And, Mike, we're talking about these customer complaints. I mean, on top of the canceled flights, the passengers couldn't get through to the airlines' phone numbers, as Brandon mentioned. They couldn't find out if their flights had been changed or even what flight they're on. The online services weren't working. No response, really, from the airlines. And critics have warned that this would happen when these regulations took effect. Do you agree?
Well, I don't think the regulations had anything to do with this. I mean, we had a weather situation, and the problem when you fly, even in good weather, and I'm sure Brandon's going through this right now knowing he's going to get on an airplane, you have anxieties. But when you're in an airport crowded with people whose flights are canceled just like yours, you don't know when you're going to get out, and there's no information, yeah, consumers are going to get upset justifiably. The question is, I agree, airlines could do a much better job of this going forward to be prepared for it, at least to say, hey, everybody, and I've been in this game, you know, hey, everybody, we don't know what the answer is, but we're going to try to find out, but we'll get through this.
Brandon, would you say that the airlines were too quick, really, to cancel so many flights for fear of being fined if they had the passengers sitting on the tarmac?
You know, most passengers that I talk to would prefer that the airlines pre-cancel flights so that at least people are home or maybe they're at their hotel, rather than, you know, stick with the flight schedule knowing that it's going to be a disaster, get these people on the airport, get them in the airplane, and then be in a position where they have to delay it or cancel. And it causes absolute havoc on the system.
And, Mike, why don't you react to that? Because, I mean, this storm was predicted. It was not a surprise. So what about a plan B here?
Keep in mind, in the airline business today, 10 years ago, you had a lot of ticket counter staff. Today, there's no tickets and no ticket counter staff. But exactly. To be prepared for this and have some sort of anticipatory plan is good. And they are doing a good job, I believe, canceling airplanes so they don't go to LaGuardia tonight, get stuck under 3 feet of snow tomorrow.
But what about staffing?
Well,
Were they prepared for that? Were they prepared for passengers not being able to change their tickets online or get any information from the airline?
Well, one of the things, too, is, you know, you don't build a reservation system for, you know, 5,000 calls in 1 hour. I mean, so you can understand that to a degree, but the staffing part, maybe they didn't have enough staffing, but I would go along with Brandon and say it's real clear they didn't plan enough on this, because the whole idea is they know the government's breathing down their throat with silly regulations, and we know we have things like fines. You know, you want to anticipate that, and I would question whether they did that in this case.
And on the flip side of that, Brandon, what about consumers? Do they hold any responsibility here? I mean, the passengers also knew about the storm, and many of them did go ahead to the airport and try and wait it out and get on a flight.
Passengers do hold some responsibility, but the lion's share of this burden falls directly on the airlines. I think what we ought to do is take all the airline CEOs and top executives, put them on a commercial flight, and let them experience what passengers have dealt with in LaGuardia, and then we'll see how quickly the airlines will shape up.
Yeah, that would be an interesting experiment. But let me ask you this. With so much cheap airfare out there today, is it a question of you get what you pay for here?
It's not just a case of cheap airfare and paying for what you get. I think it's just the airlines are stuck in this outdated business model. They don't want to change, and when an issue like weather comes up, they just throw their hands up in the air and say, we're not responsible for Mother Nature, and that's just absurd.
And Michael, I mean, you look at this mess, yet you still say that we don't need this Bill of Rights, this Passenger Bill of Rights.
What we need is somebody who can enforce it. The Department of Transportation is incompetent. They don't have people that understand these rules. You don't want the DOT telling when an airplane should be canceled or not. These people are political appointees, so it would make things even worse because we don't have the machinery to make it work. But on another point, keep in mind those passengers sitting out at LaGuardia today waiting to get out. I can't blame them because their tickets were probably non-refundable. If they didn't go, they're going to lose their money. So they're kind of forced to go out and get into this rodeo.